Here at NASA, we all pee the same color.
Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of the Brazos Valley, UUCBV, or Brazos UU for short. My name is Terry Metcalf, and I'm your worship assistant this morning. I come to this church because I believe strongly in the seventh UU principle, respect for the interdependent web of existence of which we all are a part. We are a welcoming congregation. We welcome people of diverse sexual orientations and gender identities. We welcome people across diversities of race, age, ability, immigration status, and belief. So, whoever you are, wherever you have come from, and wherever you are on life's journey, you are welcome here. We are also a reproductive justice congregation, and we respect your personal reproductive decisions. Please visit our website, brazos-uu.org. While we're in the midst of building our new building, our website and our weekly services are our church home. If you would like to contribute your musical talents, if you have a story to share about your life's journey, or if you have a passion for social justice or the environment, we would love to hear from you. To learn more about our community, you can join our email list and our monthly newsletter. You can also find us on social media by searching UUCBV. This month is our summer movie collaborative. Our service today is based on the movie Hidden Figures. The sermon is provided by Reverend Jennifer Innis and Amy Popp from the UU Church of Peoria, Illinois.
Greetings. I'm the Reverend Jennifer Innis. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. I have the pleasure of serving as the minister with the Universalist Unitarian Church in Peoria, Illinois. Thank you for including me in worship today. Our opening is from the Reverend Linda Susan Ulrich. It's a piece entitled, Open Up the Doors. Open up the doors. Push on looming wooden arches embroidered with ironwork. Brace shoulders against the weight of history unmoved. Slough off the musty smell of unused joy and stored up sorrow. Knock rust off the hinges if you have to, and let your breath precede you inside. Open the doors more. Make room for the shaft of sunlight to cross the threshold. Give the dust motes something to dance about. Peek through a slice of possibility and name even the half-hidden truths you find. Open the doors wider still, pour yourself through the gap. Strut or sneak or sidle as suits you best. Cleanse whatever scrapes your skin. And bind up the wounds that keep you from entering whole. Open the doors as wide as they will go. Draw on the strength of the earth beneath you. Ground yourself in a firm sense of who you are. Stand as a beacon welcoming the next seeker. And shine far beyond the lintel and sill. Open up all that you are. Heighten and deepen your connections to the world around you. Broaden your definition of neighbor. Grow into the largest target of grace that you can muster, and pray. Pray to become a gateway for even greater love and compassion. Open up the doors, my friends, lest we keep the stranger out and condemn ourselves to prisons of our own making. Come, let us worship together. We light this chalice as a symbol of our faith. This is the cup, a source of refreshment, a symbol of our circle of care, one that expands to welcome all. And this is the flame, a light of hope, a beacon of liberation, drawing us in with a reminder of life. The flame and the cup come together to become our flaming chalice. It is a tangible sign of how the flight of our spirits is made possible with love and with dedication. This chalice holds the promise of compassion and of witness as we renew our spark and our commitment to creating a more whole and more just world.
This morning with my mom,
and it was stayed on freedom.
Woke up this morning with my mom,
and it was stayed on freedom.
Woke up this morning with my mom,
and it was stayed on freedom.
Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. I was walking and talking with
Good morning. Today, we're going to talk about freedom in all of its forms and the importance of freedom for all. Part of freedom is being free to share your gifts with the world without being held back by unfair laws or rules or even simply ideas. My story today tells about one important time in our nation's history that highlights this point. It is called Hidden Figures. Many, many years ago, something like 150 years ago, laws were passed so people who were African American weren't free to live their lives in the same way as white people were. They couldn't eat in the same restaurants or drink from the same water fountains or use the same restrooms or attend the same schools or live in the same neighborhoods or go to the same hospitals or be on the same sports teams or sit in the same parts of the bus or marry and have a family with someone who was from a different race or even be buried in the same cemeteries. And the places they could go weren't as nice as those for the white people. A school might not even have books or pencils. I know, absolutely ridiculous, right? And even though African Americans could legally vote, many, many other unfair laws kept them from doing so. Then, suddenly, in World War II, our whole country needed to work together to fight people who wanted to take away even more freedoms from people in another part of the world. So many people were needed that there was more freedom for everyone to work, Black or white, male or female, and that openness continued on to many years later. So as a result, in the early days of our nation's NASA space program, even though racial segregation was still the law, and most people still thought that girls didn't belong in science, some amazing female African-American mathematicians worked for NASA, and they were amazing. Katherine Johnson, Mary Jackson, and Dorothy Vaughan were among the human computers who used pencils and slide rules and adding machines to calculate the launch trajectories for America's first rockets and satellites, and eventually even for the first astronauts who flew into space. I wonder if racism and sexism had stopped them and these African American women had not been allowed the freedom to share their brilliance, what our nation's space program would look like now. Luckily, we'll never know. My hope is that our nation continues to journey forward, lifting up freedom for all. For freedom for all brings a better future for all. So be it. The reading for today is called The Four Freedoms. On January 6, 1941, as part of his State of the Union address to Congress, President Franklin D. Roosevelt delivered his message about the four freedoms. It reads as follows. In the future days, which we seek to make secure, we look forward to a world founded upon four essential human freedoms. The first is freedom of speech and expression everywhere in the world. The second is freedom of every person to worship God in their own way, everywhere in the world. The third is freedom from want, which translated into world terms means economic understandings which will secure to every nation a healthy peacetime life for its inhabitants, everywhere in the world. The fourth is freedom from fear, which, translated into world terms, means a worldwide reduction of armaments to such a point and in such a thorough fashion that no nation will be in a position to commit an act of physical aggression against any neighbor, anywhere in the world. That is no dream of a distant millennium. It is a definite basis for a kind of world attainable in our own time and generation. That kind of world is the very antithesis of the so-called new order of tyranny which the dictators seek to create with the crash of a bomb.
One of the great values in Unitarian Universalism is that of freedom. A free and responsible search is the top of the list of principles at the start of the Unitarian Universalist Association in 1961. And that same free and responsible search for meaning is at the core of our current principles. I find that so many times that freedom is assumed and presumed, that we presume to know what we are talking about when we speak of freedom. But if such freedom and life, freedom of spirit and life is to be lived, I ask that we consider the nature of freedom. Because what we don't practice and understand with intention, when what we value is taken for granted, not only does that which is most precious slip away, but it is easy to miss the impact of its absence on those around us and, by proximity, on us. The question of freedom was at the top of the mind of President Franklin D. Roosevelt for his State of the Union address to the United States in 1941. He spurred the country into action in World War II, and he did so by calling us on with 4 freedoms. Freedom of expression, freedom of religion, freedom from want, and freedom from fear. These freedoms, he named, are the antithesis of the so-called new order of tyranny that was rising. Roosevelt offered these 4 freedoms as an ideological counter to the fascism and control that were emerging in Europe and in other parts of the globe. And in addition to his purpose in calling us on to the larger freedom, I think what he was also talking about was even larger than one moment or one instance in history. It goes beyond also the call of freedom as named in our country's Constitution. The freedoms he points to address the higher goals of human security and liberty. No matter who you are or where you come from, these are everybody's freedoms. He is calling the world on with these freedoms and hoping that they would be a rallying cry as to encourage the world to have confidence to come forward for the sake of our collective wholeness. Let me offer that I don't mean to say, and he certainly didn't mean to say, that freedom is understood as a magical fix for the better, without discernment or reflection. These freedoms would also be taken as a call for American exceptionalism and for the United States to think itself especially equipped, both morally and in materials, to be the enforcer of the world. That we would be those of us in the United States would be some kind of special people to go and accomplish saving others from tyranny. This exceptionalism is, of course, problematic on its own terms. But naming these freedoms and calling us to them helps us know them again and apply them with wisdom and humility. In this moment, I want to look in particular at the freedom from want as named by Roosevelt. He spoke of economic insecurity with freedom from want. And I want to know more about the nature of that want, to understand the nature of that particular freedom, because it's not just about the economics, it's not merely about the money, because money is an expression of what's already in place, what's already happening, what is already present and in the system. The want that is named in relationship to freedom is a want of resources, of information, of wisdom. It is in this understanding that want goes beyond, this understanding of want goes beyond ignorance and that lack of knowledge as well. Want to me it's so much more heartbreaking and draining. It is an experience of impoverishment. Want is a weakening that exhausts the vitality. And I find this freedom from want speaks to the collective drain on our souls. And the effect of it is felt not simply by the people directly in its path, but by all of us, by everyone in our society. Author Margot Lee Shetterly included these freedoms and the nature of want in her book, Hidden Figures. And in her book, we learn the story of the African-American women who were essential to the math and the programming and the imagination that made it possible for the United States to send a person into orbit. This exploration for space and the drive came soon after Roosevelt offered this call for these freedoms. And we, the people of the United States, were pursuing those explorations and that great adventure. Now, let me offer that the book covers decades of the 20th century, teams of people, and the development of the space program in the United States. The movie, also called Hidden Figures, condenses and dramatizes the experience of Black women in the space program. The filmmakers changed the timeline, created composite characters, and even changed how certain events happen, some to the good and some to mixed effect. So it is worth checking out the book, the reader's edition, and the movie to get a more complete account of this story. The movie, in particular, focuses on NASA's effort to have an astronaut complete multiple orbits around the Earth and return to the ground safely. And these events take place in about 1961 to 1963. And indeed, the first person from the United States to orbit the Earth in real life and in the movie is John Glenn. And we know he came back. We know he landed safely. I'm not giving away the end. The movie focuses on Katherine Johnson, Mary Jackson, and Dorothy Vaughan as part of the human computers in the racially segregated West Computer Group at Langley Research Center in Virginia. These Black women encounter racism and sexism in abundance in the course of being exceptional in their work with calculations, in engineering, in computer programming, and in dreaming of the stars along with their white colleagues. In the movie, we observe their effort to keep pushing against the legal and social restrictions that kept them out of classes, out of projects, and out of progressing in their careers. In the movie, in particular, one of the most dramatic moments includes the drive to beat the Russians at getting a person into space. And it gave Katherine Johnson a particular chance to join the Space Task Force group as one of the computers, one of the human people to do these calculations. And this group was otherwise all white men and one white woman who was handling the administration. Before Katherine enters the room, not only is she minimized as a person, a mere computer, she has the indignity of having to use a segregated bathroom, and after being seen to enjoy coffee from the shared coffee pot, the immediate addition of a coffee pot labeled colored. These scientists, people, letting themselves be, and their great work be held back by segregation, by a coffee pot, really. One of the ongoing stories is how the separate bathrooms functioned in their lives because nobody took into account somebody might be coming from one side of the campus to the other, which meant that Katherine had to walk a half mile back to the West Computer Facility every time she had to use the facilities. And after months of doing so, and all matter of weather, there is this one moment of the movie when she has been doing so in the rain, and she is entirely soaking wet, and she's been called to task by her white male supervisor, played by Kevin Costner. And he is wondering, calling her to account as to why she's been absent. And there she is, dripping wet, next to the colored coffee pot, and she lets loose. She finally lets loose and rails against having to make that journey, but not just the time for her from being away from her desk, but for every element she encounters in that space that dehumanizes her, that keeps her from doing anything productive. And when she finishes, she musters her dignity and walks out, walks back to the West Computers. And she probably expects to be fired. In the dramatic moment of the movie, her white male supervisor makes a great show of whacking down the colored women's bathroom sign and declaring an end to segregated restrooms on the entire base. I need to note that in the movie, the history of this event has been condensed and changed for a dramatic impact. The person who made possible desegregation on the campuses was in fact a Black woman, not a white man. And this happened some years before the dramatic events as portrayed in the movie. So it strikes me, even as we're talking about want and desegregation and liberation, that even how we tell the stories needs to be measured against some truth. What certainly is the case in the movie is how it illuminates time and again how these Black women curve their lives around so much bias and so much hardship, even as they are brilliant and keep finding a way for themselves and for others. The want named in the Four Freedoms is so deep. Just the story of the movie demonstrates on how this segregation reduces access to work and peers and visibility and respect, reduces these moments to work together, the imagination that could come from listening to each other, and how that was limiting them and us from getting to the stars. The absurdity of these layers of bias present while professing to be deeply concerned about human safety, as the space staff were, while aiming to leave the boundaries of our planet, certainly led me to wonder, which was more powerful, racism or gravity? And which was going to win, physics or bias? That was a real question. And it's still a real question. It keeps being a question and illuminates the depth of want and why we need to be part of the liberation. Do we, shall we, get past our tendency, our ability to separate and put down and oppress ourselves and others? It is such a sad truth that impoverishment harms those who perpetuate it as much as it does harm those against whom it is directed. The suffering in the system is on all of us. In economic terms, it is the loss of economic opportunity, mutual wealth accumulated. In religious terms, this want is this moment of separation, of more than that, a moral failure. In religious terms, that want keeps us from recognizing the holiness and the wholeness of each other, what keeps us from recognizing each other's worth and the spark of the holy that we each carry. This freedom from want, this freedom from the vacuum of information and relationship and support, how many people never have had a chance? Never had the chance that someone such as Katherine Johnson had of having love and teachers and family who could get her to the right school when they saw her capability in math when she was just a child. That freedom from want, that vacuum of relationship and knowledge, it impacts us today. Because why did we only just hear about the story in all its fullness in 2016? This story missed a generation who were watching live and hanging on every detail of the journey to the stars in the 1950s, in the 1960s, and so on. I missed this story in the time of space shuttles and first women in space. And I am so glad that my children and all children get to hear this story today. In Unitarian Universalism, we seek to profess freedom from want and freedom for the emancipation of the soul, to shuck off the frames and bindings and the burdens that come with any particular story. We are trying to lose all that would restrain us and hold us back and make room for the range, for the abundance, and for the diversity of the human experience that might lead us to new music, new math, new life, and more stars. We want to free ourselves from want, from oppression, from this impoverishment, that we would seek knowledge in freedom. Because we realize how deeply this understanding of want can go. The search is not only for knowledge, not merely for that, but also to guard the search, and even from ourselves when necessary. Our call in this moment is to understand this nature of want, the nature of the freedom from it, and the nature of the systems that would keep us so limited. Our call is to seek out those hidden stories, those hidden figures, in all of their glory and in all of the tragedy. So let us go forth. Let us go forth and take up this call and answer it. Let us go forth and add our call for freedom to the world. Amen.
Circle round for freedom, circle round for peace, for all of us imprisoned, circle for release, circle for the planet, circle for each soul, for the children of our children, keep the circle whole. Circle round for freedom, circle round for peace, for all of us imprisoned, circle for release, circle for the planet, circle for each soul, for the children of our children, keep the circle whole. Circle round for freedom, circle round for peace, for all of us imprisoned, circle for release, circle for the planet, circle for each soul, for the children of our children, keep the circle whole.
As part of our Free Church tradition, every congregation names its ministers, its educators, and what it means to become a member. Every congregation is supported by the members, friends, children, and youth. And that support comes in gifts of time, of skill, and of money. Now is the moment for your financial gift. Please be generous. Consider the long legacy that has come to us from those who long advocated for freedom and hope. Imagine what you would like to leave for those who appear tomorrow and in the generations beyond us. We now receive the offering that sustains the good work and the many ministries of this congregation.
If our worship service were in person, this is when we would pass the basket. This church shares the proceeds of the offering plate donation every week to support important nonprofit organizations in the community. This month, we support the Confronting Our Racism group. CORG is a coalition of organizations working to increase our understanding of systemic racism and the way it impacts individuals in our community. Please be as generous as you can. If you wish to make an offering, you can either mail your check or you can donate online. On our homepage at brazos-uu.org, you can find our mailing address at the bottom, and you can see a Donate Here link. In the chat box, you will see that link now. May each of us look into our hearts. How much love, how much generosity, how much faith, how much gratitude, how much hope is there? We give thanks for these gifts we have given and for those we receive and for each other.
I invite you to a time of reflection, meditation, and prayer. Let us begin with a moment of quiet. Let us collect ourselves in mind, body, and spirit. Let us pause and breathe. There's so much in our minds and on our hearts. This is the time set aside within the worship of the community when we might name our struggles and our joys. This is the time within sacred time for recognizing what troubles us, whether those troubles are in our immediate circle or in the larger world. Let us give ourselves the gift of this time for knowing and naming within the embrace of these people's care. What is in your mind? What weighs down your heart? With those questions, let us pause again and enjoy the quiet. In this gathering, let us also make room for abundance, for opportunity, and for joy. These are also with us. They are often irrepressible, often exciting, and often complicated in their own ways. Let us welcome the joys and the abundance that is within us and around us as well. In this again, we pause and breathe. I close with a prayer from the late Reverend Rhys Williams, who's one of our Unitarian Universalist elders in the 20th century, and he advocated for freedom and for the opening of our hearts throughout all the many decades of his ministry. Spirit of life, come to us to break down barriers, to widen horizons, to help us be less judgmental. Help us to discover the larger picture and the kinder conclusion, to love and let live, to embrace and forgive, and to sustain and care. Help us to reach out to our better selves, that we may love more and hate less, care more and reject less, that bound together by understanding, we may sustain each other through trial and tribulation, through joy and happiness, and through sickness and health. Help us, O Spirit, to be joined in common purpose and of love and hope and fulfillment. Renew and revive us. We seek a common holy ground for one and for all. Amen, and blessed be.
We are gathered in the Spirit, our bodies are apart, filled with joy and touched with wonder, separate hands but mingled hearts, giving thanks and singing praises for the love that calls us on from our many different places. We are gathered into one. We are gathered in our sorrow. We are gathered in our fear, in our pain and in our worry, in our anger and our tears, as we tend to one another with our gifts and with our care. Our communion
As we extinguish this flame, I invite you to bring a bit of that light with you. Hold it close as we go forth. Share it with a friend, a neighbor, a stranger, with anyone who needs to know they are beloved and touched by the abundance of life. So may we be bearers of this light. Let us go forth, reminded that to seek knowledge and freedom is to let ourselves be broken open by discovery, to unearth the history, to comprehend what has been lost, and to welcome all that may be gained. Let us fulfill the challenge that President Roosevelt and so many others placed before us, that we place before ourselves, to make real the freedom of speech, the freedom of religion, the freedom from want, and the freedom from fear. Let us go forth, that we may know all the many meanings of freedom. Let us go forth. Amen.
Here at NASA, we all pee the same color.